All right, hello friends and welcome. You are watching the Known Heretic channel. I am Amy Souza. I am here with my co-host Kay Yang and on the ground with Amanda Stulman. So those of you who have been following this story know that on Wednesday, February 15th, a letter was sent to the New York Times with signed by over 200 journalists and writers urging the New York Times to stop any critical coverage of the gender identity issue. The coverage being objected to includes the recent New York Times reporting on child sterilization, medicalization, parental loss of consent, the homophobic values of the ideology in general, and whether or not underage patients should be able to sue doctors for surgeries performed on them when they were below the age of consent. So in addition to the original letter that was sent, the organization GLAAD has signed on to this letter. They have also commissioned a van to be parked in front of the New York Times with portions of this letter posted on the van with some very hyperbolic framing that includes framing our resistance to this ideology and our analysis and critique of child sterilization and mutilization as the framing being that, of course, trans people should not exist. Of course, this is very hyperbolic and is not at all what is being said and is not at all in reference to what the New York Times has done. And of course, this is all very ironic considering that the vast majority of coverage that the New York Times has had on this issue has been wildly in favor and very one-sided on the issue. But today, live on the ground, Amanda Stulman of Key Prison Single Sex has commissioned her own van sharing information about incarcerated women who are being locked into prison cells with dangerous men, including men who are convicted serial rapists. She poses the alternative question, asking, "This is newsworthy, is it not?" So we're very excited to be on the ground with Amanda. We are going to have her report live about this issue, and she's showing us the van right now that has been commissioned. It's amazing and beautiful and pink and bold. After she is live with us, we will, Kay Yang and I will cover a bit more about this story and its unfolding. But I'm going to pass it over to you, Kay Yang. If you want to say anything, you can, and then I'm going to pass it over to Amanda.
I just want to let everyone know that it's very difficult for Amanda to hear us on the ground because there's a lot going on in the background. And we do know that there's some background noise, so we'll try to cut it when we can. But I just wanted to let people know that. And Amanda, I don't know if you can hear me right now. We want to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting this. I really appreciate it. Someone will message me if I'm not quite loud enough. I will do my best. So as Amy and Kim mentioned, we are outside of the New York Times main office in New York City. This is in Midtown, very close to Times Square, where all the Broadway shows take place. And this was a counter response, as they mentioned, to two things. First, the letter that was promoted by GLAAD and HRC and signed by many employees of this company. But also to emphasize an issue that's been ongoing for years, which is the silence of the media on the absolute hideousness of housing men in women's prisons, which has been happening for years and years, decades in some states. It has accelerated in the last several years, and most recently and alarmingly, New York State, which had New York State, which had the benefit of seeing what has happened in other locations. It's had the benefit of seeing the lawsuit that happened in California when California implemented its law in early 2021. The accusations of sexual assault, the accusations of pregnancy, the letters from women inside explaining how petrified they are, how frightening it is, how normal everyday activities are absolutely colored by their fear of this. And reporting closer to home here in New York, that New York City had a male inmate who was sentenced for raping a female inmate in the women's unit on Rikers Island, which is New York City's jail. And even with those events, and I should mention too, in New Jersey, reports of at least 2 women impregnated after 27 or so male inmates were moved to the Seoul Women's Prison as part of a settlement with the ACLU on behalf of one prisoner. It changed the entire policy in New Jersey. With all of that happening locally, California, across the country, New York State, when they returned to their legislative session in January of this year, just last month, instead of learning from what's happened in other places and slowing down, they went more extreme. They revived a law that had been pending before the New York State legislature in the last session, but they amped it up to make it even more difficult to not house males in women's prisons. They made it more difficult to protect women on any basis. And I will talk through some of the details of that law in particular. But what was just extraordinary is that they're pushing ahead with virtually no knowledge of this in the press, with the press not informing the public of this. This is happening in the New York Times' backyard. They have been informed about it by a number of people, including me. The New York Post has been made aware of it, and the New York Post reported on the New Jersey incident, but they have not yet reported on this legislative issue. And Keepers in Single Sex has submitted guest opinion editor letters to both the New York Times and to the New York Post and to the Daily News, and none of them have yet been published. We hope that they will, because this is, in fact, a newsworthy issue and something the public should be aware of while it is pending before the state legislature. So I'm going to step out into the sidewalk and have this sign in the background while I talk a little bit about the New York state law. But before I do that, Amy, is there anything else you wanted to raise, or should I go right in? Okay.
Thanks, Amanda. Go ahead, keep going.
Okay.
Maybe you want to walk us around and show the scene a little bit so people can get an idea of where you are. You're on the ground right now in front of the New York Times headquarters. And maybe if you can pan around and show people the location. It's an incredible spot.
And it's really starting to rain. So this is so you're looking there towards Broadway. We are on 41st Street, again, outside the New York Times main office, and that is 8th Avenue down there. So I'm gonna sort of duck under cover here and face the other way so you can maybe see this in the background. I'm trying to get my head out there. And the wind's picking up. It's very exciting. So the New York state law does a few different things. What it does different than any other prison law or policy that I'm aware of in the United States is that it doesn't simply provide that anyone who wants to can seek to be housed in a prison of the opposite sex. What it says is that inmates are presumptively housed according to how they align with their self-professed gender identity. It does not require, I'm trying to get the sign out of the way. It does not require that you even claim to be the opposite sex. If you claim to be non-binary, if and to be gender non-conforming, if you self-declare that you are, quote, intersex, any one of those, as long as you say, I have a gender that aligns more with that sex over there, the New York State correctional facilities across the state are required to house you with that opposite sex. They cannot ask for any documentation. They cannot ask for any medical history, diagnosis, hormone, drugs, surgeries. None of that can be taken into account. They cannot require that you present in any particular way. They cannot have any test of sincerity. They cannot discriminate based on biology, based on sexual orientation, and extremely alarmingly, they cannot take into account the views of the receiving system, i.e. women. Incarcerated women are not simply ignored in this bill, which is what normally happens in these legislative actions and policies, where they don't even pretend to imagine that the women might be immensely distressed. Instead, the New York bill considers that, yes, there probably will be a lot of people quite fearful of this, and you explicitly are required to ignore that when making decisions about housing. Also alarming, the new bill provides that a prison system has 2 days to make an assessment about whether there is grounds for the sole exclusionary provision. The sole exclusionary provision is whether there is clear and convincing evidence of a current danger of gender-based violence. Every single one of those elements has to be met. Because of the requirement of current, the prison systems can rely on criminal history, arrest history. No, there's no automatic criminal history that renders someone ineligible for being moved. The burden of clear and convincing evidence is a very high burden, which lands on the correctional institution. The institutions have 2 days to conduct a full risk assessment. One would hope this would consist of evaluating a criminal history, evaluating a psychological history, conducting an interview with the person hoping to transfer, conducting interviews with whomever they have been housed with while incarcerating. And then after gathering all of that, meaningfully evaluating it. It is just demented to imagine that that could be done in 2 days. And then in order to be effectuated, within 2 days from that, they have to put together an entire dossier with all of the supporting evidence. If they even are able to do that, much of that would have to have the names of other inmates redacted or other information redacted, and then they have to deliver it to the person seeking the transfer. It's just a joke. There's absolutely no way anybody could possibly meet that standard. The legislation was drafted with the intention of making it impossible to deny someone a request to be moved. To add insult to injury, if someone is denied a request, they are explicitly permitted under the statute to take that to court, to obtain attorney's fees, to obtain monetary damages, and then to have injunctive relief of being transferred. So the taxpayers will be paying for the inmates fighting this and their attorney's fees, and there is no disincentive to pursuing that claim. So given all of that, that the legislature has proposed this outrageous bill, which is more extreme than any other bill and any other policy of a similar nature, and the media has been absolutely silent about it. Silent. And we think this is newsworthy. And so we are posing this question and this billboard outside of the New York Times office in Times Square in New York City.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for your reporting. For people who are just tuning in, we are recapping for you. This is Amanda Stulman, the director, the USA director of Keep Prisons Single Sex. She is on the ground right now in New York City in front of the New York Times headquarters. She has a mobile billboard action that she's doing right now. There's a big, huge truck parked right in front of the New York Times with the Keep Prisons Single Sex logo, the website on there, and it is continuously flashing information. Let's see if we can read exactly what it says. Or Amanda, do you want to read it to us?
Sure. It kind of starts at the beginning, so we'll just wait for a moment to do that.
Okay, actually, if you want to let me know when it starts, I can read it.
Here we go. Here we go. This is the start.
Do you know? Oh, okay. We missed it. We'll do the next round. But let's watch it for a minute because it's awesome. And we're so glad that Amanda is chosen to do this right now in response with everything that's going on with the New York Times and GLAAD, who we're going to be talking a little bit more about. Let's see if we can get.
She moved
Here we
it.
go.
Friends, just so you know, the letter that I posted, that is the letter that the New York Times, that the people who work for the New York Times sent, explaining to the New York Times that they should not be reporting on gender issues. So I'm sorry if that was confusing. Please do not sign that letter. Read it for your edification of why they think that the New York Times should not be reporting on child sterilization, men in women's prisons. But please don't support their letter. Please don't sign it. I'm sorry that was maybe confusing.
Well, it is a little confusing, right? Because there has been so much talk about what's going on in the last few days. So just to try to get a clear timeline of what happened is that a group of almost 200 writers, including past New York Times writers, put together a letter to the New York Times demanding that they stop their, quote, biased and irresponsible coverage of transgender people. And then GLAAD, who is a large nonprofit organization who is very invested in pushing this agenda, not just on a national level, but in international politics as well. GLAAD put out their own letter, getting a bunch of different organizations and big nonprofits to sign on and back that letter, reflecting the same narrative that the other writers put out. And then it's being reported from other news outlets that they received an email that was an internal memo that was sent out within the New York Times themselves, where the New York Times admonished staff and contributors who accused the newspaper of bias in their coverage of trans issues. And they said, quote, "We do not welcome and will not tolerate participation by Times journalists in protests organized by advocacy groups," that's GLAAD, "or attacks on colleagues in social media and other public forums." So that was an internal memo within the New York Times from executive editor Joseph Kahn and opinion editor Kathleen Kingsbury. Amanda, are you still able to hear us?
I think she's frozen, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put up, I think I'm actually going to make this, can I make that bigger? I'm going to see if I can make this bigger. Let me see if I can make that bigger. And oops, I did the wrong thing. Does that get it? Yeah, that gets it bigger. And I'm going to flip through these. So these are photos from the van that is parked outside. So here we have, did you know that male prisoners are held in women's prisons throughout the United States? This is newsworthy, is it not? We have, that's right, women's prisons are actually mixed sex. This is newsworthy, is it not? We have male inmates are housed in women's prisons based on self-declared gender identity. This is newsworthy, is it not? Shoot, where did I go? Sorry, friends. Where am I here? Many states and cities, including NYC, have laws or policies to house male inmates in women's prisons based solely on self-declared gender identity. This is newsworthy, is it not? New York State legislature is considering a bill to house male inmates in women's prisons based solely on self-declared gender identity. This is newsworthy, is it not? Female inmates have been impregnated by male inmates self-identifying as women. This is newsworthy, is it not? And finally, female inmates have been raped by male inmates self-identifying as women. This is newsworthy, is it not? So this is an incredible just a really incredible piece to be put beside the GLAAD van. I think I will do. Kat, do you think, Kay Yang, do you think it's good to put up the show the GLAAD van?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna remove this.
Yes, so you all might have seen this already the other day. It was circulating on Twitter. GLAAD rented their own mobile truck and they posted up in front of the New York Times with their message, which Amy is pulling up right now.
Yep.
And remember, GLAAD organized over 100 different organizations to demand that the New York Times stop reporting on this issue because they're scared of the public hearing the truth. So here's an image of
Can you see that?
what that truck looked like. Dear,
Sorry.
That's okay. So let's see, I'll read it when it starts.
Is it starting?
Oh, here is a copy of the letter, it looks like.
Yeah, okay, got it. Sorry, I'll go big again.
That's okay. So that's a copy of the letter that they wrote. The New York Times prioritizes anti-LGBTQ voices over the voices of transgender people. Dear New York Times, stop questioning trans people's right to exist and access to medical care. So again, we know that transgender is a legal and corporate fiction. It is not a material, tangible reality. It's a completely subjective state. It should not be entered into law.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of feedback.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the GLAAD. That's the GLAAD video. We can make her big again. I'll put us all in here.
Amanda, can you hear us?
I can, yes.
Okay, great. Do you want to let us know if what the response has been from people who are walking by and seeing the truck? I know that you're in a very highly populated area. I know the weather's not good right now, so that has an effect on how many people are coming by, but you're near Port Authority. So I don't know if you're getting people's reactions. Can you give us a little bit of an idea?
We are, and we've already been here for about an hour, so we saw some of the New York Times lunch crowd. So I would say it was about half split between people leaving the building and really staring at it, and about half very purposefully walking very quickly away. So there are glass doors here, so people can read it in the lobby there. So they kind of they got a little preview before they stepped out on the sidewalk. And I should say, it really only started to rain and get this windy as soon as we went live. It was quite nice. So there were more pedestrians walking by. As you all mentioned, literally, the station is the Port Authority is right now at 8th Avenue. So it is a hub, and it is a long weekend, so a lot of people are probably leaving work right about now.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say nobody says people have taken pictures. I'm not making myself. I'm not hovering right near the truck necessarily, but We have flyers and pins for anyone who looks interested.
That's awesome. So for anyone that couldn't quite hear, what Amanda was saying is that she is right in front of the New York Times headquarters, and there was some of the lunch crowd coming out of the building. They definitely took notice of the truck, some stares, but also some rushed walking away. It's almost like maybe they don't want to be confronted with this message. It will be interesting to see if the New York Times reports on what's happening right now. This mobile action that Keep Prison Single Sex has commissioned in front of the building. This is newsworthy. The fact that there's an action happening, that Amanda is there on the ground right now, and the fact that this is happening, that women's prisons are being invaded by male rapists, pedophiles, murderers, and abusers of all sorts. This is absolutely 100% newsworthy. So we want the New York Times to report on this issue. They should be reporting on this action right now. So I hope that we see somebody from the building come out to interview Amanda. They would really be remiss to not have this opportunity to speak with her. She is so knowledgeable about what's happening on this issue all around the world, in the US, and also particularly what's happening in New York right now. As Amanda mentioned, back at the end of, was it Jan? No, actually it was at the end of this last month, right? So it was just a few weeks ago that the New York State introduced Senate Bill 2860 to house incarcerated individuals based on gender identity, and anyone who, quote, self-identifies as transgender, gender nonconforming, non-binary, or intersex. You see what they keep doing here is rolling all of these extremely different things under one banner. And now they're including gender non-conforming as well. So if you don't conform to gender, you just go into a women's prison. This is insane. We know, thanks to reporting recently from Genevieve Luck, did some reporting in Redux about an instance that's happening in Canada right now, where a man who raped an infant was moved to a women's prison in the mother and baby unit after claiming to be, quote, transgender. So women are not the only ones who are in danger in this situation, right? Because babies and children are also in these situations of incarceration with their mothers.
So men are being housed with not only women, but children as well. These are men who are serial rapists, murderers. These are men with multiple counts against them. These are child rapists. These are very sick men, you know, and as we have noted time and time again, you know, many men are vulnerable in men's prisons. Gay men, pretty men, young men, disabled men, sex stereotype non-conforming men are all vulnerable in men's prisons. Many men are. Rape should not be a sentence in men's prisons either. However, women are not human shields for vulnerable men. There's never an excuse to put men in women's prisons. So we're looking at a news story that Kay Yang is putting up. In Canada, a man who raped infants has been, under the guise of silence, moved into a women's mother and baby unit because of his claim, you know, and these men don't even have to claim to be trans women. They can claim to be non-binary. They can claim to be intersex, which is a physical condition. So they can claim to have a physical condition that they do not have. They can make all kinds of claims about themselves and simply be housed with women. There are, in California alone, I believe 254 men on the docket waiting to be moved. 54 of those men have already been transferred. No men up to this point have been denied. So 0 men have been flat out denied being moved. It's insanity.
Now, we know one of the biggest things that we are up against and why this has been able to get so far, how this agenda has gotten to the point where this is what's happening, is that there has been a media blackout. There has been a lack of fair and balanced reporting on this issue. Women's voices have been consistently maligned and ignored. Women who speak out about this issue have been villainized. So we know that the reporting is incredibly biased. We know that the news that we receive in America is owned by only just a few conglomerates, a few corporations controlling everything that we see and hear. So this is part of why the real information about what's happening is not getting out. And that's why what Amanda is doing right now, going out there in the real world, getting boots on the ground, forcing this message in front of people's faces with this truck. That's what it's come to. That she has to rent this giant mobile billboard to blast this electric message into people's faces, because this is how badly women are being ignored on this issue. So this is incredibly important work to get out there and disrupt the narrative and set the record straight about what is happening to incarcerated women.
And it's worth noting the horrifying stories coming out of Canada and elsewhere aren't one-offs in this sense, which is when we are able to get access to the data consistently shows that the men who are self-identifying as trans or non-binary or who are seeking to be moved are disproportionately sex offenders on sex registries, are convicted of sexual offenses. In the federal system, it's approximately 48% of the trans-identifying male inmates who are in for a sex offense, which compares to less than 12% of the general federal prison population. In California, which Amy mentioned, the individuals seeking to transfer to the women's prison there, it's about 30% who are registered sex offenders compared to about half of that for the general male population in California's prisons. So these numbers, they can mean one of two things. And these legislators can pick which one it is, right? It either means this population who self-identifies in this manner are disproportionately sex offenders on the sex registry, convicted of sex crimes, or this is a route for people who want to abuse the system, who are predators by nature, to take advantage of these laws and policies to opt themselves into women's prison. Mm-hmm. Take your pick. We don't care which one. They're both pros.
That's right. And actually, I have this other article up here. I can't access the whole thing, but you can see this was recently published about in Scotland, where 4 out of 5 trans inmates, or inmates who are called trans, because we know trans is not a real thing, 4 out of 5 of these so-called trans inmates that are moved to women's prisons are murderers. So these are the facts. This is the absolute worst of the worst male predators. The most violent men in society are being housed in female prisons, and these women already under duress, in incarceration, in a situation where they have no control over their boundaries, their space. They already have such limited access to healthcare, to the outside world, and now this is a new level of degradation, a new level of humiliation, a new level of attack on these women's psyches, and also their physical bodies as well, because they're physically in danger now, locked into cells with male rapists and pedophiles.
Absolutely.
I want to encourage everyone to go to Redux, get this article that Genevieve wrote. This is an incredible reporting. Save this article on your phone or wherever, send this to everyone that you know, because this should be front page news. This should be on the front page of the New York Times, that this is what's happening. And we really have, all of us have a part to play in spreading this information, because like I said, we're up against these incredible media blackouts. So what can we do? We can raise our voices and tell this story wherever we can, wherever you go, wherever anyone will listen. Let them know that this is happening. And when people say that this isn't happening, well, then you have articles like this where you can show them, actually, yes, it is happening. You can direct them to keep prison single sex. And by the way, as well, visit the Keep Prison Single Sex website for more information about the New York Senate Bill 2860, especially if you're here in New York, because this is coming down the pipeline. And if you go onto Twitter, Amanda Stulman also has a really great thread where she discusses this bill and breaks it down a little bit to help us understand what it means. Amanda, do you want to talk any more about this bill 2860 and what it means? Because I know it goes beyond. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I do. I don't want to forget to mention this, though, which is I'm so appreciative that you are mentioning Redux, because they have been absolute heroes in pursuing the details on these cases and elevating them. And I don't know whether people know this, but they got a shout out on Joe Rogan's podcast a few days ago. Bridget Fedesi was on and mentioned them. So I'm so happy for them, and I hope that brings a million new eyes to the hard work that they're doing. They're doing work nobody else is doing. They're doing it on a shoestring with a handful of absolutely determined women. They're amazing. Could not be more appreciative of what they do. In terms of the New York bill, yes, please go visit the website and Twitter and Facebook if you like, because there are links there which take you to the New York State Senate page and Assembly page. You do not have to be a New York State resident to comment. I will tell you though, I'm not sure that any comments have appeared yet on the Assembly page, and only a handful have appeared, on the Assembly page. Only a handful have appeared on the Senate page. And I believe that's only for people who have complained that their comments are not showing up. Please do go and make comments. If they don't go through, I've actually provided information on Twitter and Facebook about an email address and a phone number to use to call to complain about it. If you want to mention it to me, please shoot me a message. Contact information is available on Twitter and Facebook and on the website page to reach out. And I will happily field those calls and put them in my file of things to complain to the New York legislative clerk about. Anyone, anywhere in the world can do it. You don't have to be a U.S. resident. You don't have to be a New York resident. Please speak out. At least one person who commented mentioned what's happening in Scotland. And I would like to put the fear of what happened to Nicola Sturgeon in these politicians in the United States. That President Biden tweeted just a few days ago that he was interested in reviving the Equality Act, which would make this legislation that's being pursued in New York and that's been implemented everywhere moot. One federal law could do this with the swoop of a pen. Given that there is a split Congress, it's not likely, but it is just extraordinary given all the evidence that has come out in the last several years since it was last introduced. And the ire of the public when they see what happens to women's sports, when they're now seeing what's happening with child medicalization, when they're seeing what's happening in prisons, it's deranged that they're trying to revive that again. So they're not going quietly. The politicians are moving full steam ahead. But let's sturgeon them.
That's a new phrase. We're going to be using that. Let's sturgeon them.
Yes. And again, one of the most important things that we can do is spread the word so that the public understands that this is happening, because to be honest, most people still don't know that this is going on. I think a lot of us have stories of telling people about this and being, their response is disbelief and shock, and they want proof. So anything that we can do to make sure that people understand this is real, this is happening, it's even worse than you might think that it is. And we have evidence to prove what's already happening to women because of this. Not like we needed evidence, right? We didn't need to wait for women to get hurt to know that policies like this will hurt women. So it's really awful that they are treating women in prison like they are cannon fodder, like they don't matter. This is all just an experiment. And remember, these incarcerated women are like a canary in a coal mine, because what's happening to them, this is being done to them first because they are in a vulnerable position, because they have no say, because they are out of sight, out of mind from the public. Once they can perfect what they're doing to these incarcerated women, then they can push these policies on the rest of us in every space throughout society.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the way that these laws have been put in place under cloak of darkness, without public commentary, without public influence. They have been manufactured and swept in front of us with very little opportunity to push back. Of course, now women are aware of this. We are pushing back, and I think that more public messages like this, these are the messages that people do find truly appalling and truly frightening. I think there is still a misconception under the guise of this totalitarian tactics of forced positivity, under the forced positivity of language that includes inclusivity and validation and these poor trans children. They are working on this empathetic narrative that tries to convince us that this is somehow a marginalized group, when in fact what we can see here, and what we can see very strongly with the prison issue, is that this is about this is an entitlement issue. This is about men's entitlement to access women's spaces, to violate women's boundaries around our bodies. And this is one thing that I like to point out, and it's especially clear with prisons and sports, is that only one sex gains an advantage from transition. There is only one sex that gains an advantage from claiming these special identities like trans or non-binary or intersex. There is one sex that gains an advantage. And when there is a special privilege granted to one sex, denied to the opposite sex, historically, we have called that sexism. But sexism is a word that is losing traction in political consciousness. So I suggest that we all start bringing that word back into the political consciousness, making people aware of the sexism that is at work in these issues. When women are forcibly housed with male rapists, I mean, sexism does not cover the appalling nature of the crimes against women that are happening, but this is absolutely an issue of structural sexism.
Mm-hmm. And I want to be clear, because people are saying that GLAAD has been captured. But from my research, GLAAD has been, one of the driving factors behind this. GLAAD has been working with other nonprofits and advocacy organizations on an international level to create the language around gender identity ideology and to push it into international law, international policies, and to push it on a national level into laws. That's exactly what they say that they're doing. Everything that they do is intentional towards the purpose of changing laws and policies. So, GLAAD is one of the organizations that used to send propaganda to the LGBT center that I worked at. This propaganda was given to us to take directly into the New York public school system and to indoctrinate children with transgender ideology. That was like almost 12 years ago at this point. So GLAAD did not just become captured. Now they've been doing this. They've been driving and forcing this ideology onto the American public and to the international public as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just want to mention this one more time. So Mary, I saw your question. I lost it in the stream now, but I saw you asking about that letter. So the letter that I published earlier, this letter, this is what Keep Prison Single Sex is protesting. They're protesting the letter. So the letter is one that is written by employees who identify on this under the trans umbrella. So these are employees that identify under the trans umbrella, and they are critiquing the New York Times for posting any critical dissent of what is happening in the gender issue. So their letter that they are asking you to sign is one that is asking the New York Times not to publish anything critical about any of these identitarian issues. So they're telling the New York Times, you are not allowed to post or write critically about child mutilation and sterilization. You are not allowed to write critically about men in women's prisons. You are not allowed to write critically about parent consent over what is happening to their children. So they are asking for the New York Times to not report anything critical on these issues. And when they are saying time's up, they are saying time's up on any dissent. So they want the New York Times to have one-sided coverage that only has positive stories about the identity issues. And I think it'll be fine if you did happen to sign that letter posting something dissenting, but ultimately it doesn't work in our favor for anyone to sign that letter.
Which just shows like how Orwellian in nature all of this is, the word games that they are playing, the inversions that they are pushing. This is why we have to be very careful now when we're reading things, read more than just the headline, right? Because they are trying to manipulate our thoughts.
So we, Amanda, if you can hear us, if you're going to be there a little bit longer, there is someone coming with a reporter. I don't know, Rasputin, Jen, I don't know who this reporter is. Maybe you can tell us more about the reporter, but I'm very excited because this should absolutely be covered. After this live stream is done, we'll be sending out a press release, hopefully to get some media to cover this van, just so everyone is aware. Although this live stream may go for an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, the van itself will be there all day today. It will be there until 6 o'clock Eastern time, which is 9 o'clock Pacific time. So there is plenty of time for any reporter to head over there, get footage of the van, get coverage, tell this story.
And if you're in New York City or the immediate surrounding area and you can get there, head over and see if you can find the truck and take a photo with it, put it up on social media, or if you know anyone in New York City, send them over to the location and, get people talking about it on social media. And I want to say again about GLAAD. So GLAAD did not just start switching over to trans issues after marriage equality was passed in the US, because The marriage equality happened in 2015, and GLAAD actually changed their name from Gay and Lesbian Alliance for Anti-Defamation. Gay and Lesbian Alliance for Anti-Defamation. They changed it in 2013, and they said it no longer stands for anything at all. And they said the purpose for changing the acronym of GLAAD was to be inclusive to transgender identities. So that was in 2013, 2 years before marriage equality passed. And when I was working at the LGBT Center starting in 2011, we were getting all of these materials from GLAAD, all about transgender and gender ideology. So this was before marriage was passed, just so people understand what the timeline looks like for how this has all gone on. Take a minute to say hi to women in the chat. I see Yvette is here, VF555. Awesome new profile photo. Anung is here. Hi, Anung. Ikwe. Chicana Feminista is here. We've got Darian. Hi, Darian. Good to see you. Alex Pinwheel Art is here. Hi to Belfast Beatnik. Let's see who else. Lavender is here. Marsha Matthews. Thank you for being here. Beatrix. Awesome to see you. Beatrix says they don't want us paying attention to the boring goings on in Parliament. They don't want us writing letters, calling, emailing, or protesting. That's right, they don't. And that's why we're doing it, because we are disobedient and we won't obey or submit. Belle LaCroix is calling this institutional misogyny, Darvo, and sexism on steroids. Absolutely right. Mary Ross wishes that she could be there. I know a lot of us wish we could be there as well. Dana K, hello to you. And let's see, who else do we have? I see a lot of women are here today. Kai, Nurse Ratchet, nice name.
Yeah.
Laura Kamiensky, good to see you. Oh, and Yvette, I saw Yvette Neri in the chat as well at one point. So just going through the chat and saying hi. Thank you all for being here. There's Heather. Hey, Heather. All right. So another thing that GLAAD is doing, just because I can't stand them so much because they are major architects behind pushing this, GLAAD works with Jigsaw. So Jigsaw is a division of the Google parent company, which is Alphabet. And they create tools that, quote, deal with abusive comments on the internet. So what they're doing is basically researching and cataloging. They're going through all of our communications, all of our tweets, all of our posts on Instagram, all of our back and forth messages on Facebook, probably all these comments as well. Their artificial intelligence is going through all of this data, researching and cataloging every time we use any terms like transgender or gender identity or trans or any of the like slur words or whatever. They're going through cataloging all of that information and training the Jigsaw AI to recognize anytime we are talking about this issue, to be able to silence and censor us from speaking about this, but to allow the trans rights activists to speak about it. So this is some of what's going on with the artificial intelligence that's being, that we're all feeding right now with the chat GPT and all of that. Like, these artificial intelligences are being created as instruments to control us and to further this trans agenda.
Yeah. It is absolutely incredible. And I do, Kay Yang and I encourage you not to use programs like that. Don't give them your thoughts and information. Don't help them grow their consciousness by donating your own intelligence and curiosity and imagination to programs like that. It's really not worth it, I don't think, to use those.
Well, not only that, but it's very dangerous because we are giving over our human agency to machines that were programmed by people who are pushing the agenda. ChatGPT comes from Microsoft. So it's all connected. And Microsoft, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they've been heavily involved in pushing the trans agenda as well. They've worked with organizations like GLAAD. I think they've worked directly with GLAAD, actually. But they're all putting their institutional power and money and their connections behind forcing this agenda.
Yeah.
So we know that this is being forced because women are being raped in prison. There's no way that this isn't that this is something that people want.
This is not, as we keep repeating, this is not an organic movement. This is not some grassroots uprising of a marginalized class of people. This is a top-down, highly financed and highly motivated agenda that is being pushed onto us, inserted into the public commentary, into our laws, into our infrastructure from the top down. It is the tactics that are being used are very well known tactics. Other totalitarian movements have used these tactics. Other marketing campaigns. Kay Yang has reported on this. You should go look at her Deprogrammer YouTube channel where she talks about Bernays and big tobacco and how the infrastructure around the rise of big tobacco was manufactured. So this is very much manufactured into our publicity, into our media, into Hollywood, the fashion industry, music videos. This is highly orchestrated. This is, again, it's not an organic, homegrown reaction. It is something that is being orchestrated, designed, engineered, manufactured, and our indoctrination is their goal. So the more that we can say no, and the more that we can say a flat out clear no, this is why those of us who are hardline are absolutely hardline about this. Because there is really no space to have compassion for these so-called marginalized people. I like to think of them as cult members. I, of course, can have compassion for captured cult members, but I do not side with cult members on the side of the cult. I call out captured cult members when they speak on their issues. I would also just like to add, this has come up a lot for me in my feed recently. It's not, doesn't exactly pertain to the topic of women's prisons today. But there is no such thing, just like there is no such thing as trans, there is no such thing as gender dysphoria. So the term gender dysphoria is a manufactured term in the DSM-5, which is a political document that is highly financed by Big Pharma. So this term includes an underlying agreement with the notion of an innate gender identity. So this term is constructed. This term has no legitimacy. So I know a lot of you, or some, not maybe you guys, but I know some people out there are still attempting to have compassion for the people who really do have gender dysphoria. But there is no real thing as gender dysphoria. I'll have an essay on that going into it coming up. You can check that out on my new Substack, which is the knownheretic.com. But I really want to make it clear that all of these terms are engineered. All of these terms are manufactured. There is no truth or value or worthiness in these terms. They all come with an agenda, and they are there to interfere with your cognitive capacity and your intuitive capacity. They are there to create interference. They are there to manufacture a false sense of empathy, and they are working on you to disrupt your own ability to recognize the truth when it's in front of you. You've muted yourself, Kay Yang.
Thanks. I wanted to check in with Amanda and see if she can hear us.
I can, yes.
Yes, she can. Okay, great. Amanda, do you want to give a recap of where you are, what you are doing, and why for the people who are just tuning in or maybe didn't catch the beginning?
Yes. We are in Midtown Manhattan of New York City, very close to Times Square. We are outside the New York City headquarters of the New York Times newspaper. And we are here today for two reasons. Largely, the first in response to a letter organized and promoted by GLAAD and promoted by HRC, signed by a number of employees of the New York Times, signed by a number of artistic people, cultural people, a number of most horrifyingly women's groups. I don't know whether you have the signatories available and if that hasn't been discussed yet, but as we have lost all of those legacy quote unquote feminist groups who have adopted this ideology, they too signed on to this letter. And the letter was essentially seeking that the New York Times stop their very, very slow, tentative dipping their toes into the water of finally covering issues about trans ideology and insisting that their bosses at the New York Times, or if they're not their bosses at the New York Times, stop any coverage which is anything other than promoting gender ideology. So, in support of that letter, GLAAD produced a digital truck with a sign, with signage, including excerpts from the letter that was sent. So we are here to counter that and to say that these issues are newsworthy. They deserve to be covered by the New York Times, by other papers. We are also here because this issue is one of the most underreported by mainstream media. The issue of men and women's prisons, which has been happening for decades, continues, is accelerating, and it is a real failure of American media that it has neglected this issue almost entirely. That we often get stories from the UK. The Daily Mail covers issues happening in America's prisons more than any mainstream media does here. We rely on wonderful publications like Redux to cover these issues, but the storied newspapers who are flush with funds, flush with reporters, and who I have been saying for years, don't any of you people want to win a Pulitzer? Why are you not covering this? So those are the reasons that we are here with this billboard and outside of the New York Times in Midtown Manhattan, near Times Square.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda, for reporting on this. Thank you to Amanda for being there today, for all of the work that you do with Keep Prison Single Sex. And I actually want to ask everybody right now if you can take a minute to, I'm going to drop a link on the YouTube. Let's see, I'll put this link in the chat. This is a link to the crowdfunder for Prison Single Sex. This is being put together by the KPSS UK, which is the main Keep Prison Single Sex, and what the work that Amanda does with KPSS. Oh my goodness, KPSS USA is under the umbrella of KPSSS over in the UK. So any of your donations to the crowdfunder for Keep Prison Single Sex will go to fund not just the work that happens over there, but it will help to fund the work that Amanda is doing here. And just like this mobile billboard, and potentially help to fund the next action. So I'm going to make sure that everybody has this link.
Yes, thank you so much. They are our big sister organization, and all the fundraising and crowdfunders go through them. They had put up this most recent crowdfunder in relation to the incredible work that they did in Scotland. KPSS's director, Kate Coleman, was on the ground in Scotland, pushing through to parliamentarians there, working incredibly hard with a great group of volunteers. And everyone involved in Keep Prison Single Sex, whether here in the UK, we're all volunteers, using our own money to get this issue in front of as many eyes as we can. So any support really helps. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, Amanda, for elaborating on that. And especially thank you for reminding us that yourself and the other women with Keep Prison Single Sex, including Dr. Kate Coleman, who is the director over in the UK, none of you are taking in a salary for any of this. Everything that you are doing is as volunteers because you care about what's happening to women. And these women are on the front lines, literally fighting this. I mean, Amanda is right in front of the New York Times demanding that this issue be covered in mainstream media. So it doesn't get much more boots on the ground than what she is doing right now. So these women are really out there just putting their all into making sure that incarcerated women's voices are heard, that our incarcerated sisters, are being stood in solidarity with. So they are making sure that that happens. So if you can't afford to donate, I completely understand, but everybody can get the link in the YouTube chat. I just put it in there, the link to the crowdfunder, and share that link through your networks and on social media. They have a campaign going right now in recognition of 200 years since the 1823 GLAAD Act mandated sex-segregated prisons in the UK. So their campaign is following up on that. 200 years later, women are being raped and impregnated in prison. Their goal is to raise £20,000. They are at 77% of that goal with 9 days left. So please help them reach this goal.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Amanda, do you want to say anything else about any of the other work that Keep Prison Single Sex is doing? Because I know you do so much work around this, and most of it is happening behind the scenes and people aren't seeing it. They don't know all what's going on, but you guys are working tirelessly. So if there's anything you want to let us know about some of the other work that's going on with you and your organization, this would be an awesome time to share that with us.
Thank you for the opportunity to do that. One thing that is a challenge in this area is that there are almost 3,000 prison systems in the United States when you put together the federal system, the various state systems, county systems, municipal systems, and each one can have their own policy. Each one has their own Freedom of Information Record Act request systems. So there's no uniformity. It's very difficult to obtain information. So what we try to do is to focus on a few states at a time where things are a bit of a crisis. Mm-hmm. So in addition to New York, which is our primary focus, and I will mention here again that if you have a computer from anywhere in the world, you can register your disagreement with the New York State Assembly Bill and Senate Bill. The information for that, links for that, can be found on KPSS USA's Twitter account, Facebook account, and website, which would be so fun to post several times during this conversation. We are also focused on New Jersey as well. New Jersey is in an interesting situation in that the reason they have men and women's prison there, which largely which came to light for a number of people when two women were impregnated after 2 dozen or so men were moved there. That was as a result of a change in policy, which came about because of a lawsuit. That policy is currently under review. And we are starting a big push at the state legislature there for them to weigh in on that. And we are monitoring what is happening with that policy review. Women who are incarcerated in New Jersey are rightly extraordinarily fearful. They're also extraordinarily brave. A number of them are in contact with us and are reaching out, and we have a pretty good feel for what's happening there. So I would just ask, please be on the lookout for any actions that you can get involved in related to New Jersey. It's a little bit delicate in terms of timing, so I don't have the precise timing right now, but if you just be on the lookout, and hopefully we'll have another action item for people to do there. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, thank you so much for listing all these different ways that people can be involved. And I know, I don't think I see her in the chat today, but Connie Hahn is often here in the chat. And I know that Connie is trying to organize some women to write letters to incarcerated women and to help share information with women on the inside about what's going on. So if you're interested in any of that, you can get in touch with Connie as well. So that's another way to help, is just providing support for these women who are feeling like they've already been thrown away by society. They're already invisibilized. No one's looking out for them. No one is amplifying their voices. They're feeling, desperate, like their back is against the wall. So if we can, help support them in any way that we can, and support especially the women who are acting as their voice and advocates, women like Amanda Stulman, and also Amy Ichikawa over on the West Coast, as we know, is a formerly incarcerated woman who is doing incredible advocacy work around this issue, sharing her personal experience, sharing the voices of incarcerated women who reach out to her. So you can look for the information that she's shared online and share that to people, because again, really, we're up against a complete blackout in the media. So we have to be the media. Like Kelly J says, be the billboard. Well, this is literally, bringing the billboard to the New York Times and shoving it in their faces.
And while we've been talking, I have been sending DMs to all of the reporters that I know who have helped us out in the past. So I hope that we will be getting some coverage of this. I've let people know, and people who are watching, if you know any media people, please also let them know this van will be there until 6 p.m. New York time. So there is plenty of time for any reporter to get out there, take pictures of the van, cover this story. I have made a post about it on my Twitter, so anyone who wants to amplify the reporters that I have already tagged, tell them that this story is important to you, that you want to see coverage of it. I think that is really useful, and it helps. Of course, we are here today creating a story ourselves. We are making a record of this regardless of what other news outlets cover it. There will always be this public record that we have created of this story. The reason that we do these live streams, the reason that we hold these watch parties, of course, we love having all of you, this community here, witnessing and sharing this with us. This witnessing process and this sharing process and this community building process is incredibly valuable and important. I do not take this part of the process lightly. And the other thing that is happening is this is simply being recorded. Of course, I want everyone to come and participate, but even if no women came and participated with me, it would be important and valuable to record this, to have it here, to have it on YouTube in the public sphere for our own records. And that is one of the main reasons that we do this. As you see, there is the sign made by the wonderful Kay Yang. The sign right behind her is a poster you can purchase. It's a sticker you can purchase. She has them on her Stop Female Erasure website, and it says it right there. This is what we always say, what we continue to say. And I love that I'm hearing women all over the globe saying it. There was a woman who stood up in Scotland. She was awesome. Saying it. And I'm going to say it again right now, that this is the public record of our descent. This is why we do these events. This is why we record them. This is us creating a record. So regardless of who is telling our story, we are telling our stories. We are telling our own stories. So that's what we are doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just have to keep on being the media. And, you know, what happened, the giant show of people who came out to meet Kelly J in Glasgow to stand up against the GRA, the Gender Recognition Act, to stand up for women, for children, for humanity, and really in defense of reality. They came out. It was such a beautiful show of people, and it is proof that we are building a global resistance to this ideology and this agenda. We know that people are starting to realize what's going on and rising up and saying no. But also saying no isn't good enough. We really need to make sure that we understand the root causes of where all of this is coming from, and keep guiding our pointing finger and directing back to the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, these international governing bodies that are pushing this agenda on a global scale. They are the ones who are organizing corporations together. They are working with GLAAD. They are working with other signatories on the letter that GLAAD put out.
You said you're supposed to be working on it now. You're supposed to be somewhere right now?
No, I just need to write it up.
Looks like Amanda is chatting with passerby. I'm going to mute them because I don't know if they might be having a private conversation.
Oh, I love her silver. I just noticed her silver vest. Not a great vest.
I'll let
I can see you, but I can hear you. I don't know whether you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Were you having an interview just then? Was someone talking to you?
No. Jen has come by to help.
Oh, great.
To round up some reporters.
It's not working though. They won't even dial up. And the one reporter that I have that I text with is on vacation. She's from the New York Times, but I'm begging her to get me in touch with another reporter to come down.
Great.
So we're not having much luck at the moment, but we will stay here, and as soon as we hang up from this live stream, we will say hello to everyone who's leaving the building and see if they want to have a talk with us.
Great. And Amanda, if they'll let you, if you record those interactions, I'm happy to post them on my live stream later, or put them on your Twitter, and I will repost them. So we'll just keep this story flowing and growing.
Perfect.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you so much. We appreciate it so much. I appreciate all of your support. I appreciate your support in being here. I appreciate your support in liking and subscribing and sharing the work that this channel is doing. This live stream service does cost an annual fee of about $500. So I do appreciate your support.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Amy. Thank you for bringing that up, because you know what Amy does here, using her channel and her platform to elevate the voices of women who are fighting this issue on the front line all over this country, and beyond, live streaming what's going on in other places as well. It is so important, and she can't, do that work without our support. So if you appreciate these live streams that she does, she's bringing you city council meetings. She's showing you what went on with the YMCA, not just what happened in her community where she stood up for the Let Julie Swim campaign, but also what's happening now in Santee, California, where she's been covering that. She covered, of course, all of Kelly J's Let Women Speak USA tour. She was live with boots on the ground. Jen Thomas was all over the country and plugging in, doing events with her. She's covered events in Madison, Wisconsin. She's covered stuff with WLRN. She's just covered so many incredible and important, on the ground grassroots activism from everyday regular women, right? A lot of us women who are doing this work don't have platforms. Some of us have been trying to build them up, but a lot of the women who are doing this work are just everyday women who really want to advocate on this issue because they care, because it's important to them. And what Amy does by lifting up women's voices who have small channels and small platforms and giving them an opportunity to be heard on a bigger scale and get their work across, it's super important. And I love that Amy does that. And thank you, Amy, for all the work that you've done to amplify me, my voice, and my work, because you're always doing that. And I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm so appreciative of your work, Kay Yang, and I've been so proud to see you get a lot of traction recently. It was incredible to see you on Glenn Beck. It was incredible to see you on Fox News.
Yeah,
your perspective on this is so important. You are a whistleblower. You are also one of the most well-researched women speaking out on this topic. Your reporting and coverage on what is happening with the UN, how they are engineering and orchestrating what we are seeing is invaluable. I look forward to what you have to, what more you have to write and say about this issue. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate you shouting me out. I appreciate all of you here, and thank you for the support. It's really invaluable to me. As Kay Yang says, and I know that the rest of you know this, those of us who are doing this work, it comes out of our own pockets. So we really appreciate your ability to support what we do. And we know it's not just monetary. It also is in your sharing. It's in your likes. It's in your channel subscriptions. We deeply understand that finances are hard. I understand that a lot. So I know that sometimes it's just the little bit that means so much. So we thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. I see Genevieve Gluck in the chat. Genevieve, we were just shouting you out. Your article, we just had Redux up on the article up in our live stream. We are on the ground today with Amanda Stulman. We have lost their camera, but hopefully they may or may not be back. I saw that they had a wolf physician there. We're trying to get some reporters. We've tagged them into our tweets. So we're trying to get some on the ground coverage of what is going on today. Keep Prison Single Sex, their van right in front of the New York Times building, exposing what is happening to women who are being forcibly incarcerated with men, and asking the question to the New York Times, this is newsworthy, is it not? But I see, Kay Yang, you have pulled up that Redux article, and I think it's worth talking about it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so hi to Genevieve Gluck in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. It's always awesome to see your name pop up in the chat. We are big fans of your work, and I don't know if you were here earlier, Genevieve, but we were talking about all of the incredible reporting that Redux does on this issue and what a valuable resource Redux is for all of us, everyone who is interested in fighting for and protecting women and children. So this is an incredibly well-researched article by Genevieve Gluck. It was published on Tuesday, the day before GLAAD put out their letter, the day before the letter was submitted to the New York Times. So what Genevieve is reporting on is a man who raped an infant who has now been moved to the mother and baby unit after claiming to be, quote, transgender. And I am suggesting that everybody bookmark this article, save it, keep it in your back pocket for when people tell you that this never happens, or you're out there trying to pique people and they say, what? Like, I've never heard of this before. You can say, yes, and it's much worse than you think it is. Here, read this.
Yeah, I use Redux all the time in my arguments when people are suspicious, when exactly, Kay Yang, as you said, when people tell me, oh, this never happens, I say, oh, interesting. Here is a news source that has reported on multiple, the hundreds of occasions where this is happening. So just, browse through their entire catalog of articles to see when and how this is happening. Genevieve has also been instrumental in reporting on that Santee, California case that we were just talking about earlier. These issues are everywhere. They are absolutely everywhere. And, I'm really glad Genevieve is here too, because this is, and thank you, by the way, for your donation, Genevieve. I appreciate it so much. But this is an amazing opportunity to just observe and witness how multiple women are telling these stories in multiple ways. So Redux is telling these stories. We're reporting it in the live stream. WLRN has their podcast. All of these ways that different women are doing their podcasts, gender a wider lens, the truthful therapist, all kinds of places where these stories are leaking out. That's kind of how I like to look at it. They're trying to repress us. They're not giving us mainstream platforms, but still the stories are leaking into the public consciousness.
Yes, and Genevieve also mentioned Isabella, our friend Isabella Malbin at Whose Body Is It? I mean, she has just been so instrumental in providing a platform for women to get our voices out. She has interviewed Genevieve, of course, some of the really excellent, hard-hitting interviews with Genevieve Gluck. I know that the sissy hypno porn video went absolutely viral. That was huge when that happened. It really helped to pique a lot of people. I mean, people were completely shocked after hearing that. Amy has been on there talking about child grooming, bringing in her background and expertise and embodiment and depth psychology. Isabella also platformed me to talk about the work that I did at the LGBT Center, indoctrinating children with trans and gender ideology. Isabella also platformed me to talk about the United Nations and their role in pushing this agenda on a global scale. And I would also like to direct your attention, if you did not see the presentation that I gave to Women's Declaration International in January, you can go to their website and scroll back in the videos. I did a full presentation explaining what the UN is doing and how the terminology that they've used in their policy has gone from talking about sex and sex-based discrimination and violence against women to inserting gender, and then completely taking over with gender identity and the language of that and trans. So go and check that out if you want to understand. And I don't even say like want, we need to understand where this is coming from. We need to understand that this is a top-down agenda. That's another way that we can peak people. Because
I wanna amplify something that you're saying, Kay Yang, which is the importance of this research. Also, shout out to Radical Cartoons for your political commentary and cartoons on this. Thank you for being here. But I want to say, there's all kinds of women also doing all kinds of research. Kay Yang is doing amazing research. Jennifer Billick is doing incredible research. Genevieve Gluck is doing incredible research. Alex Aaron is doing incredible research. I have a different field of research, but we're all researching this issue. And when those of us who are doing this research are posting our articles, I really encourage women to do stay involved. I know there's a lot out there to ingest, but I do encourage you to read as much as possible. Reading other women's research is how I diversify my ability to speak on this issue. I have a specific purview through the lens of embodiment, through the lens of safeguarding and depth psychology that I come from, but I read all kinds of analysis to deepen my own ability to come from my perspective. And what we do when we're doing this research is we read tons and tons of things. And what we do is we distill everything that we've read into a few pages. So, we've done that distillation work for you so that you can understand the research in a really concise way. And so I think it's really important that, the women who have gone through the trouble of distilling all of the information that they've consumed into a digestible piece, it's really important for you to take that research and understand it. And I think it really gives us a lot more integrity. And what I mean by integrity is not just the moral value of integrity, but it gives us grounding. It gives us foundation. It gives us an ability to truly have standing when we approach this issue. So I encourage everyone to, subscribe to as many Substacks as you can. Watch these videos, and thank you for calling out Isabella, because she does have an amazing channel with so many well-researched women. And this research that we do, we spend a lot of time reading.
I just want you all to know, I've literally gone through like over 100 UN resolutions and documents in like the past couple of weeks. So if you haven't seen me online much, or where's Kay Yang doing? What's she doing? Because I did just get a little bit of attention with Fox News and Glenn Beck, which was awesome. But then I was like, you know what? I need to dive back into the research, because what's the point of like getting any attention if I don't have the most important and hard-hitting research to produce? And I know that my work with the UN and covering what they're doing is really only just beginning. So I've really had my head down, just like scanning through pages and pages of documents, and it's infuriating and sickening what they are doing to women. And, they're the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. I don't know if you all understand, but they work directly with the United Nations. They all work in one symbiotic group, and they are actually forcing countries that have gone through extreme economic disparities, war, famines, anything like that. They're preying on these vulnerable countries and forcing them to push through laws and policies around gender identity and transgender, these policies that directly harm women and children and break down our understanding of reality. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund are forcing these countries to adopt these principles, or they won't get loans. They won't get any money. They can't eat. They cannot feed their people. So this is how they're forcing people at a national level, forcing entire countries to adopt these ideologies. So yeah, I'm quite disgusted by what the UN is doing. I saw somebody wanted me to pronounce Yogyakarta. Now Yogyakarta, that's in reference to the Yogyakarta principles that were created in 2006, and the name comes from the place in the city in Indonesia where people met to come up with this set of principles. So Yogyakarta, Indonesia, it refers to an actual location. So if you've heard that term and you're like, what the heck does that mean? It's a place in Indonesia. These principles were developed by quote unquote human rights experts, which included a lot of executives at some of these organizations. Now, GLAAD themselves, I don't think was at these meetings, but people who, there's a revolving door with these nonprofits and these foundations, right? There's a revolving door. So people who work directly with GLAAD were part of designing the Yogyakarta principles. These principles are supposed to be about advocating for LGBT rights, but of course, what was it all about? It's about actually putting the rights of lesbian, gay, and bisexual people in jeopardy by eliminating the category of sex altogether as a measurable category. So the Yogyakarta principles, now they haven't been fully adopted by the United Nations, but that actually doesn't matter because the United Nations has adopted the language of gender identity directly from the Yogyakarta principles. So once they have that language and they insert that language into UN policy and resolutions, it doesn't matter if they adopt the whole principles or not because everything's compromised now. So look out, there's going to be a wave of research from me coming on this issue. And I really need everybody to get behind understanding why this is so important, because if we can get people to point up and realize that this is coming from a level that goes beyond our little government and partisan politics, we have a much better choice of weathering the storm as we head into another election cycle here in the US, because we know that things are going to get hairy. The waters are already muddied. This issue is getting incredibly complex. There are a lot of controlled opposition voices have entered the playing field. They are pushing the idea that trans is a real thing. They're pushing for women to use she, her pronouns for men. Women are being told that we're being rude and disrespectful for not acknowledging that, men demanding to be called she and her and share our spaces. So there's a lot of watering down of the narrative right now. And this is why it's so important for us to remain as hardline as we can and to keep on pushing people to go back to looking up and where this is really coming from. We don't want to get caught up in the back and forth partisan arguing when we can say, hey, look, they're doing this to all of us.
Yeah. And I really encourage all of you. I know it is a challenge because we all have very personal feelings about this. We have personal feelings about the different women that we love who are involved in fighting this issue. I feel that way too. I have personal likes and personal dislikes of various women. However, I really, really encourage you to keep your blinders on. And as Kay Yang says, point up. I really encourage everyone not to get involved at the cross pointing, at this woman isn't really doing feminism. This woman is an elitist at feminism. I'm not a feminist. I am a feminist. You're fighting this fight the right way. You're fighting this fight the wrong way. This cross pointing is exactly what they want. Okay, this is what the powers that be would like to see. They want us to get lost in a crisscross fighting of one another. So I really encourage you, one way to disrupt that algorithm. So be a strategist who wants to disrupt the algorithm, and you can disrupt their algorithm by not participating in that crisscross fighting. Just keep your blinders on, say exactly what you want to say on your page. You don't have to fight with someone else about what they said on their page. You can just say what you want to say. So I know it's compelling, because it's working on our emotions. So it works on our emotions to fight with one another. But as much as possible, I think what Kay Yang is saying is so valuable. We have got to point up. We have got to keep our eyes focused on that prize, which is fighting these people who are pressing this ideology and pressing these laws down on us from above. They are the ones to go after rather than one another.
And yes, thank you for that, Amy. I completely agree, of course. So Genevieve is mentioning here the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Now, this is also something that comes from the United Nations, and this, I'm less versed in this convention, but from my reading of it, what I understand is they are pushing, this is another attempt to get at age of consent laws. And this is an attempt to say that children deserve access to gender affirming care, meaning that children are able to consent to life-changing surgeries that, you know, mutilate their healthy bodies, their healthy genitalia, and it can even sterilize them. So that when they say Convention on the Rights of the Child, it engenders this idea in your mind, oh, they want to help and protect children. It's the complete and exact opposite. In fact, pretty much everything the UN says, it's a lie on the face level, and it's a complete opposite. So it's really imperative that we understand where this is coming from, because again, here in the US, women, we have experienced a different trajectory than women in other countries. We do have more of a voice here. It is easier for women to speak out here for all the various reasons I could get into. But what we need to understand is that there are women all over the world and countries where they aren't getting information about what's happening, where these laws and policies are being implemented and they might not even know that this is happening. So I do believe that we have a responsibility to use our voices as much as we can to speak out on this issue, because this is affecting women and children all over the world.
All over the world.
So I like Beatrix put in a really great comment here on the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank she said they used to force these countries to allow globalization. That's still what they're doing, really. They're doing the same exact thing that they always have been doing. The IMF and the World Bank are tools of colonialism and imperialism. Now, colonialism also means the colonization of the female sex and our sexed bodies and our reproduction. So what's changed is really nothing. It's really just about us understanding the scope of colonization has gone past trying to occupy physical territories and land. And this is now about occupying the female body and our female reproductive system. Someone asked as well at one point, what is the end goal to all of this?
Yeah.
Part of why all of this is happening, because we are right now transitioning into what they're calling the fourth industrial revolution. As you know, we've already had 3 so-called industrial revolutions. Yep. Each one of them has brought a new level of oppression for women, a new level of degradation for humanity, a new level of enclosure of the commons and public space, a new level of just complete exploitation. So what we're entering right now with this fourth industrial revolution is about, merging technology, man-made machines with our physical biology.
Yep.
So the end goal of all this, why is all of this being forced? Because a new economy is being built and it relies on the exploitation specifically of the female reproductive system.
Yep. Yep.
So that's us in a nutshell.
Yep.
A
Yep.
lot more to be said on that, of course.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to underscore that this is and always has been an attack on women. Of course, it's attack on children. It's attack on all of our humanity. I saw. I saw a man posting about this the other day, and he said that women's rights to single sex spaces was the least of our concerns on this issue, but it is really the most of our concerns. The reproductive control of women's bodies has always been at stake. It's always been an issue for cultures that are capitalist, consumerist cultures. Of course, what he used language to describe as the patriarchy. It doesn't matter if you use that word, the patriarchy, or not. But in male-dominated cultures, the right to control women's reproductive capacity to profit. And this is the important point. It's not just about control. It's about the profit. There is a profit being made. That is why all of these things are very interlinked. Of course, that's why it is very important to follow what Genevieve says about porn, what Jennifer Law says about surrogacy, what Kay Yang is speaking about here about how the globalist agenda of the UN is at work. And this is why whether or not you call yourself a feminist, whether or not you are one, whether you not agree with it, the original goal of feminism was a liberation. It wasn't a equality movement. It was a liberation movement from this exploitation. And we see it in trafficking. We see it in porn. We see it in surrogacy. And we 100% see it in the ideology that is attempting to dissociate us from our reproductive capacities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're really creating a class of infertile people, right? Genevieve's got a comment here I'm going to put up. They create a cohort of infertile people, sell them sex, sell them babies. So yeah, they're creating a class of people who are infertile. And now what's happening, they're being sold these synthetic sex identities, as Jennifer Billick calls them. They're being sold these false identities that they are adopting. And then they can be sold babies, right? They can be put in a position to be marketed to for fertility treatments. And so this is all tied into one another. Go ahead.
It's the artificial manufacturing of a market. This is what it looks like to create a market for something where there was none. If you value women, as the class of birthing human beings, the only human beings who have the capacity to gestate young, you do not need to manufacture a way to create and sell babies. So this is the artificial creation of a market in which they are manufacturing a patient and then artificially providing a cure for this problem, but they have inserted the problem into the culture themselves. And then you have to pay to solve this problem for yourself. So go on.
I mean, I would even argue they created the problem with, the hierarchy of gender and then forcing these extremely rigid sex role stereotypes onto, I'll just speak from my experiences as an American and understanding American history. There was a time when, the media was just getting started and it was really used to solidify and strengthen these really intense sex role stereotypes that was sold to us because of those extreme stereotypes, because of the sexism inherent in that. People, women, of course, are responding to that. This is part of why we see so many young girls who believe that there's something wrong with them and their body, that, oh, I shouldn't have been born like this. Oh, I actually should have been born a man. And now they're being marketed the idea that they can become a man. So the problem was created with this artificial hierarchical construct that was forced onto people. So that's the first problem. The reaction is now controlled, right? People's response is being controlled instead of allowing young women to, or instead of young women being geared towards understanding that our oppression is based in our biology and in our material sex. They are being rerouted instead and told, oh, here's the solution for you. You just need a little testosterone. You just need to get away from your horrible abusive family. Bye cat, bye other cat.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kay Yang and I are going to be talking about this more. These are, this this live stream, we've veered a bit into interacting with you all, as we love to do. We love answering your questions.
Yeah, we were trying to see if Amanda was gonna make it back.
I was gonna say, and that's exactly where I was gonna head. I did get a text from Amanda. She needed to wrap up as they were going live. The temperature dropped, and then it started to rain and wind, and she physically could not stand to be outside in the weather any longer. But what we are gonna do is I am still contacting media. I am gonna send out a press release after this live stream has finished. We hopefully will get some reporters out there to the New York Times building to cover this, create some stories about it. Hopefully we can keep this flow going. The conversations that we have here in these live streams, in these watch parties, are incredibly important. We continue to help ourselves, to help you and to help ourselves explore this issue in the deepest possible ways to really get to the root of what is going on, and to be able to push back more effectively. And I will contact Harvey as well. Thank you, Genevieve, for that. And thank you, Genevieve, for being here. I understand.
Yeah, Harvey Marcellin.
I thought it was a reporter. Go on. Sorry, you go, Kat.
That's okay. So Harvey Marcellin, and now I'm struggling to recall all the details of the case, but he is a man, of course, who identifies as a trans woman. He had killed a female partner in the past, and then he killed another woman. I think he killed a total of 3 women, Genevieve is saying, and he also dismembered at least one of them in his New York City apartment, and he was rolling around the streets of New York City with a woman's leg in a bag in his wheelchair. Very gruesome, very heinous act. And he is in a women's prison in New York. So, and I believe he's at Edna Mahan, right? Because that's the only, I'm pretty sure that's where he's at. I don't know if anyone's posting in the comments. Let me see.
That's crazy. That is absolutely
crazy. He dismembered at least one of his victims, possibly 2. Let me see if I can pull up one of the articles. Okay, here is an article by Genevieve. Trans serial killer who targeted women was granted entry to a women's shelter and used photos of victim on Facebook. Here he is right here. This is Harvey Marcellin, and I think he goes by the name now Marceline. Anyways, so this is another good peak trans material for people. So you have the most violent, heinous, deranged, depraved men being moved in to these vulnerable women's cells. This is a whole new level of psychological torture that these women are being subjected to. And the fear of being locked into a space with somebody like this, I can only imagine. And then the frustration of not being able to speak out on it, to not be able to name a man as a man, because as we know, thanks to Amy Ichikawa's work, she has spoken out about this. She's told me personally in conversations how women are terrified to speak out, because when these incarcerated women, when they speak out, they face consequences for it. They get put into SHU. Okay, that's solitary confinement.
Yeah.
For speaking out about this. This is torture.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Genevieve says, the women who blew the whistle on this were fired. Women, this is what is happening all over the place. You know, women who speak out, our jobs are threatened. There's a woman right now in my town, a friend of mine, who was hired as the associate publisher at the local paper here. She's been at the job for 4 days. 4 days already. Her job is being threatened simply because she has refused to publicly stand against me. You know, this issue, any woman who publicly speaks out, lets their face be seen, they are going to be threatened, and there is a danger. So we have compassion for why women seek anonymity in this, but these women who are incarcerated, you know, they can't even seek another job. They cannot even seek anonymity. Their choices are very narrow, and so I do think we owe them so much for the ones who are willing to be brave, because the incarcerated women are the most vulnerable. And they have the most to lose from pushing back against this narrative. So whenever I am feeling my own fear, and you know, it does still come up, I have to say, even as someone who has been fighting this for years, I think we can be real about the fact that fear does come up. But when I think of these women who are incarcerated, it fortifies me. It gives me courage, because I know that if they have the willingness to stand and push back, then I can do it myself. I can manufacture it, even if I'm not feeling it. I can manufacture it on their behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very appreciative to Amanda Stulman today for taking this action, for standing up and mounting a resistance and a response to what GLAAD has done. They cannot show up in the streets thinking that they are going to use their money and their power to silence and push down women, step on the necks of incarcerated women. It will not be tolerated. There will be a response. There is a response happening right now. Even though there was inclement weather and Amanda had to go inside temporarily, the truck is going to be out there rolling around the New York Times headquarters for the next 3 hours. So they're going to be out there. Thousands of people have already seen the truck. Thousands more will see the truck. We're coming up on rush hour in another hour or so. And I know that people are going to see this message, and it is cutting through the lies. It's cutting through the matrix of the mainstream narrative that have completely dominated this conversation. They have maligned women's voices. They have pushed down the head of any woman who tries to come above the fray and speak about this. So what Amanda is doing right now with the truck, again, she is forcing this narrative and conversation into reality. She's putting it in front of people's faces. And it says a lot that we've not had anyone from the New York Times come out to interview Amanda thus far. We are still hoping that somebody comes out and has the integrity to stand up and report on this issue. They're really missing an excellent opportunity if they don't get out there and talk to Amanda Stulman, because she is just an incredible advocate on this issue and authority on what's happening. Not just in the US, but she's keeping up with what's going on all around the world. And of course, she has been on top of exposing what's happening here in my home of New York State with the Senate Bill 2860 that was introduced at the end of last month. This bill is to house incarcerated individuals on their own identification of, quote, gender identity. And it actually goes outside the confines of just affecting jails and prisons, and it's going to affect places like mental institutions and units as well. So this is huge what's happening right now. If you're in New York, make sure you know what's going on with this bill. Follow Amanda Stulman's Twitter. She is, where is it? No, that's mine. She's at noxy_US.
Mm-hmm. And you can follow, if you go to Known Heretic, I have been tweeting about her all day, so you can follow her from there. Mm-hmm. I put the link for the Keep Prison Single Sex website up. Didn't mean to interrupt you. Finish. Go ahead, Kay.
Quite all right. Quite all right. But we're up against an incredible amount of propaganda. Okay. It's not just GLAAD. They had over 100 different organizations back their letter to the New York Times. That includes Human Rights Campaign. Now, this is another organization that I have researched and reported on. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can find an expose on one of the co-founders of the Human Rights Campaign, Terry Bean. This man has been accused of sexually abusing and raping multiple teenage boys, him and his other male partner. And Terry Bean, like I said, one of the co-founders, the money that he used to invest into the founding of HRC came from his former partner. I can't remember his first name, last name, Holmes, who was a pornographer. He was instrumental in orchestrating the switchover from pornography in theaters and in public to VHS home viewing. So he made a ton of money off of producing pornography explicitly, quote, bareback videos. And this was in the right in the middle of the AIDS epidemic and crisis. They were promoting barebacking, aka sex without condoms or protection, anal sex without condoms or protection. And so when I talk about HRC and GLAAD and some of these other organizations, I'm always met with this idea of like, oh, they've been captured. They were just taken over. They used to be doing good work. No, these organizations, in my opinion, when you look into it, right from the beginning, they were, they've sort of inserted themselves into the narrative so that they could control how this narrative and conversation evolved over time. And you can see that they've done that very well.
Exactly. And they are also engineering and helping to orchestrate and push who gets put forward in politics. Kay Yang, I know you covered this in your video about Terry Bean, but he was instrumental alongside Jennifer Pritzker in pushing Obama into office, who is the first president that we had that began to create legislation in support of quote unquote trans people. So they pushed him into office, and he then pushed this ideology into the national legislature, into further deeper into the public consciousness. And ultimately gave it the authority of the office of POTUS. So these behind the scenes actors and orgs with their billionaire funding, again, they're engineering what we see in our political figures who are put in front of us. They are these puppet masters who are pulling the levers and pushing the buttons, and that is largely how we see what we are seeing in front of us today. So it wasn't as if Obama had this great idea all by himself.
Actually it started under Clinton.
Yeah.
That's when this language started to get inserted. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Amy.
No, that's fine.
For more information on the Pritzkers, definitely check out Jennifer Billick's work with the 11th Hour blog, but she also did a really incredible piece of investigative journalism. It was published in Tablet. So go and read her expose on the Pritzkers. Dana Kennedy from the New York Post also did an expose on the Pritzkers. I helped her with the research for that and provided some quotes for that. And I have some of my research right in front of me. And I want to just give you guys an idea of how much money the Pritzkers has given to GLAAD specifically. And this is what's immediately available on their website. We don't know what other information we don't have access to, right? But here's a $50,000 from Pritzker in 2019 to GLAAD, $25,000 from Pritzker in 2017 to GLAAD, another $25,000 in 2016 to GLAAD, another $10,000 to GLAAD in 2015, a $50,000 in 2020 to GLAAD, $1,000 in 2017 to GLAAD. So, this is not hyperbole when we say that that elite people are orchestrating this. This money, the way that they shift this money around is by putting their money into private foundations, which aren't taxed. This money is not taxed. They can do whatever they want with it. And then they move it from their foundations to whatever advocacy groups that they want to. So this is really important information to understand. I don't think we're going to go on for too much longer. We don't have Amanda's feed anymore.
I agree, and we're veering into so many topics, but
all connected.
It's all connected. It is all connected. I wanna of course just underscore the work that Amanda Stulman of Keep Prison Single Sex has done today. This response that she has had to GLAAD, posing this question. This is newsworthy, is it not? What is happening to our most vulnerable women? This is newsworthy. So anyone who wants to tweet at the New York Times, anyone who wants to tweet against GLAAD, this is encouraged. Anyone who wants to help the crowdfunder for Amanda and Keep Prison Single Sex, this is highly encouraged.
Yes, please donate to their campaign if you can. Remember, it's a campaign. It's based, Keep Prison Single Sex is based out of the UK, but Amanda Stulman is their USA director. All of the money that goes to the broader KPSS crowdfunder that you see up on the screen is the money that goes into funding the work like what you saw today with Amanda Stulman on the ground in front of New York Times with her billboard. If you are having trouble finding Amanda's Twitter, Amy just put it up on the screen for you. You can also go to @KnownHeretic or @StopXXErasure. We've got Amanda's Twitter on there. If for some reason it's not coming up for you, I know sometimes Twitter and the other social medias like to play games on us and hide accounts, especially when something's trending. So if you can't find it, if you can't find their Twitter, you can find it through ours. And if you can't donate, like I said, I mean, we all get it. Times are tough right now. If you can't donate, just simply share the crowdfunder with your networks, with people who you think will care, and then they can share it with people. And even if people can't donate, it helps to raise awareness so that people understand the severity of this issue and what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Hold on. I'm gonna go post it on my Facebook Live. I see that there's a comment about that from here we go. Here it is. Ooh, could hear myself all of a sudden. Okay, I posted it there. Oop, nope, nope. Okay, posted it.
Yes, and then this is a good comment from Lavender too. Black lesbians blew the whistle on GLAAD selling out and racism 20 years ago. No one listened. I've heard about this as well. If there are any resources on that, I know I came across something in the past, but if you, Lavender, or anyone else has any more information explicitly on that, can you please email me at thedeprogrammer@protonmail.com?
Yeah.
Because I'd like to share any of that if I can.
Yeah. Next week, I'm not sure what lives we have. I don't, there's, the Santee City Council, yes, it meets every other week. I am checking in with I think they're called Rooted Wings. They have been the ones organizing the pushback at the city council meeting, so I'm checking with them to see what they're up to. I will be hosting a live to do a talk back about my my new Substack piece. So I wrote, for those of you who may not know, I wrote a Substack piece called Sex Mimics Are Mimics.
Yes, and it's awesome. You need to read it if you haven't.
So thank you, Kay Yang, where I talk about the linguistic sleight of hand. So I use a little bit of talking about magic. I talk about animal mimicry and how signs and signals are interpreted. I talk about how our embodied responses function versus our conceptualizing functions function. So I talk about the physical functionality of how these things are processed by us from a psychological lens. And I do think it is a really great article that helps people explore just really exactly why this word trans has no validity to it. It's a cognitive dissonance being inserted into our culture, and it dissociates us from our instinctual embodied responses and our own the authority of our own senses. So I'll be doing a talk back about that next week. I may have some other live streams coming up. It's been a long time since I've done any interviews. I do have some interviews that I want to get on the books. I've been doing a lot of juggling. Been doing a lot of juggling, so I haven't gotten them on the books as quickly as I would have preferred myself. But I want to thank Kay Yang for being here today. I want to encourage everyone to follow her Twitter, which is Stop XX Erasure. I want to encourage everyone to go to her Stop Female Erasure website, follow her research on the Deprogrammer channel on YouTube. Do also follow Genevieve Gluck, follow Redux Magazine. I appreciate Genevieve being here with us today and her reporting that we have used to give grounding to what we are reporting on here. Just as a wrap up, we were live on the ground in New York City in front of the New York Times building with Amanda Stulman of Keep Prison Single Sex. It was our response to the letter written to the New York Times urging them not to have any critical coverage of the gender identity issue, and urging them to stop reporting on it in any way that reflects negatively on the impacts that ideology is having in the culture. They
basically lobbying the media to not report and to not report the truth.
Yeah, to not report the truth. So GLAAD commissioned.
As if they need more, as if they need more encouragement to not report the truth.
Yeah, GLAAD commissioned a van yesterday.
Wednesday,
thank you. Wednesday, Amanda Stulman commissioned a van today. So it was really fun to be on the ground with her. Anyone who is in New York City, that van is going to be on the ground in New York City until 6 p.m. Eastern time. So there is time to go down, take your picture with it, post it on your social media. We'll retweet it. Kay Yang, any final thoughts? And then we're going to wrap this up.
Yes, I just want to remind everyone what GLAAD used to stand for. GLAAD formerly stood for Gay and Lesbian Alliance for Anti-Defamation. And in 2013, they actually put out a statement saying that GLAAD doesn't actually mean anything anymore. It's not an acronym to represent anything at all. And they did that in order to be more inclusive to transgender identities. So that was in 2013, a full 2 years before marriage equality. So this has been being pushed for at least that long. And when I worked at the LGBT Center in 2011, we were getting materials from GLAAD that were all about gender. This is where I learned gender identity and transgender. My indoctrination came from GLAAD and GLSEN and HRC. So just to give a little bit of a history and the trajectory on what's gone on with GLAAD, they have been pushing this, and they are working, like I said, with the United Nations. They're supporting the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is a plan to push gender identity on everyone, all people around the entire world. GLAAD is also working with Google and Jigsaw. They are developing artificial intelligence explicitly to silence our resistance. So it's a big deal what GLAAD is doing. And I just wanted to, end with grounding us in what's really going on with GLAAD. They didn't just wake up and start doing this. They've been plodding along this entire time. Somebody said earlier, I can't remember who said it, but I saw in the chat, the timing is a chef's kiss, isn't it? Just so interesting how all of this is just lining up lockstep like clockwork.
Yep.
This is why it is so important that we, as organized as they are to push us down and oppress women all over the world and put children in danger, we have to be just as organized to oppose them and keep our eyes on, these bigger organizations and these bigger entities that are pushing this, so that we don't get bogged down and fighting each other at a partisan, level here in the U.S. I'll stop because I don't
Absolutely. Thank you all for being here today. These watch parties continue to be dynamic because of your participation. I love putting up your comments on the screen. I love engaging with what you all have to say. This is a forum where participation is very much encouraged. Most of you who I saw here today are regular subscribers to my channel. I see you all the time, so I appreciate you being here. There were some new people who I haven't seen yet. Thank you for being here as well. Thank you, everyone.
I love that we can get on here and recognize the same women's screen names and voices, because we can see that there's like a community of people who really care about this space that Amy's created. So, and another reminder, again, Amy is funding all of this with the live stream out of her own pocket. It's over $500 a year for a subscription. So if you can send her anything, thank you. I saw a couple of people were able to donate. Genevieve was one of them. Also, one of my family members, Ellie, did a donation as well. I don't know if she's here, but thank you, Ellie. So, If you want to hear more from Amy and I, and you are going to be in the Austin, Texas area in April, you can come to Partners for Ethical Care is producing an amazing, incredible event. There are going to be 7 experts speaking on a panel exposing this agenda of gender identity across America, what it looks like in all the different realms. And I'm even going to be speaking about it on an international level, of course, because I'm always bringing that angle. Amy's going to be sharing her expertise. We have Alex Aaron is coming all the way from Tel Aviv to be there with us. She's one of the co-founders of Partners for Ethical Care. She is also the woman behind the Gender Mapper project, another invaluable resource for all of us to be using. Miriam Grossman will be there. Brandon Showalter. Isabella Malbin is going to be there as well. She's going to be our moderator. So please come if you can join us in Austin, Texas. It's April 20th. And then the day afterwards, there is going to be a rally at the Austin Capitol. If you've seen any of the other rallies in Austin before, they can get pretty dicey. So it's going to be a pretty big deal for us to be out there and protesting this in Texas. What else?
I think that's it. I think, you know, we could keep reporting on things that are upcoming. We could keep reporting on things that that are informational. But what we will do instead is let you go, enjoy the rest of your day. You know, breathe some fresh air. You know, these issues are challenging. They take a lot of mental and emotional effort out of us. So nourish yourself today. Take care of yourself today. Be resilient, keep yourself fortified and able to come back to this fight. This is a marathon, not a sprint, to use a metaphor. And we thank you all for your more than participation, but your encouragement, your support. We thank you. All right.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been another record of our public dissent with Amy Souza, known heretic, and myself, Kay Yang, the deprogrammer. Thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again at the next live stream.
Bye.